2 days before Grandma Ruth's 90th birthday, my mother sent back the introduction I'd written for the interview video I'd spent 6 weeks making. She had replaced all of it with a longer, formal speech and wrote, "Please read this exactly." I called and told her, "I'll give the tribute I wrote, or you can give the one you wrote." The printed program already said family tribute, Emma, and Mom hated public speaking. She called me back almost immediately. "You're seriously refusing to read a speech." "I'm not refusing to speak. I'll read mine." "Emma, yours is a minute and a half." That was the idea. Mom let out the kind of sigh she uses when she thinks a problem would disappear if everyone else would just be reasonable. "I only cleaned it up. Grandma is turning 90. People are coming from out of town. Your Aunt Carol and I have spent weeks putting this together. I don't want the family tribute to sound casual." I had both versions open on my laptop. Mine started with a story about Grandma calling me during a terrible month in my 20s and asking one question before hello. "Did you eat anything that wasn't crackers today?" Mom, S started by calling her the matriarch of our family and thanking about 12 people by name. There was nothing offensive in it. That almost made the argument harder. I said, "If you want those exact words said, you need to say them. I don't want to stand up there reading from paper." "Then let me use mine." "No, yours leaves people out." We went around that twice more, not very elegantly. Mom kept saying the words were all about Grandma anyway. I kept saying that if she wanted a particular speech, she could give that speech. Finally, she said, "Fine, I'll figure it out," and hung up. For a few minutes, I just sat there wondering if I had picked the stupidest possible hill to stand on 2 days before my grandmother turned 90. Grandma Ruth and I have always been close. She can also be stubborn about tiny things. She once drove back to a grocery store because they charged her for 2 bunches of parsley instead of 1. She corrects dates in other people's stories, even when the date has absolutely nothing to do with the story. If you tell her not to bring anything, she will bring something and then complain that everyone is making too much fuss over her. But she shows up. When I moved into my first apartment, she arrived with a toolbox, paper towels, and a lamp she said was ugly but useful. During a rough stretch after a breakup, she called every few days, usually to ask whether I had eaten or whether my car was still making that noise. That was the person I wanted the tribute to sound like. The next morning, Mom texted me a slightly shorter rewrite. She had cut maybe a page. At the top she wrote, "Better." I read it twice. It was still completely her voice. "Grandma's lifetime of devotion to family has shaped generations." I would never say that sentence out loud unless someone had trapped me in a fundraising banquet. I texted back, "If this is the speech you want, you should give it. I'll still bring the video and set everything up." She called, "So now you're dropping out of the tribute?" "No, the video is still happening." Then what am I supposed to do between the cake announcement and the video? Either let me use my introduction or give yours. There was a pause. Then she said, "You're better at speaking than I am." "I know, so why can't you just read it?" I did not have a brilliant answer. I was getting irritated, and I probably sounded irritated. "Because I don't want to." She went quiet. I added, "Sorry, that sounded worse than I meant, but I'm not reading it." Mom and Aunt Carol had done most of the actual birthday planning. They booked the community hall, handled catering, ordered the cake, mailed invitations, and dealt with decorations for about 60 people. I had volunteered for one piece. I told them I would make the family tribute. The main part was an interview video, a little over 10 minutes long. I had spent about 6 weeks collecting recordings from people Grandma had known in different parts of her life, then editing them together with old photographs and a few pieces of older family video. I was not doing it because Mom assigned it to me. I wanted Grandma to have it. Her younger sister recorded herself in her kitchen and restarted 3 times because she kept forgetting where the camera was. One of Grandma's old friends told a story about the 2 of them getting lost on the way to a wedding in the 1970s because neither would admit the other one had the map upside down. A former neighbor remembered Grandma shoveling the sidewalk before dawn and then denying she had done his section too. Two of the older contributors needed help recording. I spent one evening on the phone explaining how to switch a camera from photo to video, then realized I had been explaining it for a different kind of phone. I enjoyed the whole process. The finished video was not fancy. One clip was slightly crooked. Another had a television playing quietly in the background. I left both in. My introduction was only supposed to get us into that video. I was never trying to summarize Grandma's entire life in 90 seconds. Mom saw the tribute differently. To her, it was another part of the program she and Aunt Carol were responsible for. She had been worrying about whether the pastor should be thanked, whether Grandma's cousin who had helped with transportation years ago would feel overlooked, and whether one branch of the family would think it had barely been mentioned. I could understand why she cared. That did not make me want to stand in front of 60 people and present her wording as mine. That afternoon, I sent the final video file to the laptop we were using at the hall and packed a backup copy on a flash drive. I also printed my original introduction and put it in my bag, which was probably a sign that some part of me still expected Mom to change her mind. My cousin Lee stopped by that evening to pick up a box of old photos for the display table. She knew something was going on because Mom had apparently asked her whether she would be willing to help with the speaking part. Lee said, "What speaking part?" I showed her both versions. She read mine first, then Mom's. "Your mom's sounds like your mom." Exactly. She's not wrong about wanting to thank Aunt Diane. I know, and I would hate reading this too. That was about as much support as I wanted. After Lee left, I opened Mom's speech again. I kept thinking how ridiculous the whole argument would sound if I described it in one sentence. My mother rewrote a birthday speech, and I refused to read it. Grandma was 90. We all loved her. Reading 6 or 7 minutes of words would have been easier than making Mom do something she hated. I was already going to be near the microphone. I was already bringing the laptop. I was already going to introduce the video somehow, so I tried. I stood in my kitchen with the pages and read the first paragraph out loud. "Tonight, we gather to honor the matriarch of our family, whose lifetime of devotion." I stopped halfway through. It was not bad. It just did not sound like me. I could hear Mom in every sentence. I put the pages down. The morning of the party, Mom and I were both busy enough that we barely discussed it. At the hall, Aunt Carol was trying to figure out why one table had 9 chairs and another had 7. Mom was arguing with the bakery box because the lid kept touching the frosting. I connected the laptop to the projector, checked the sound, and played the first few seconds of the video with the screen turned away so Grandma would not see it early. Mom came over while I was coiling a cable. "What are we doing about the introduction?" "Same choices." She pressed her lips together. "Fine." I honestly did not know which choice she meant. Grandma arrived later with my uncle. She made it through the front door, saw the balloon arch, and said, "You people have lost your minds." Then she spent the next half hour greeting people one by one. She complained that everybody kept making her pose for pictures. She asked Aunt Carol whether there was coffee before she asked where the cake was. When an old neighbor told somebody they had met Grandma in 1982, Grandma leaned over and said, 1981. His daughter was still in braces. That was Grandma. By the time lunch was over, I had mostly stopped thinking about the speech. Then Aunt Carol came to me and said, "We're doing the tribute in about 5 minutes." Mom was standing near the side wall holding 3 pages, not my pages. She had shortened her version again. She walked over and said, "I'm going to do it." "Okay, I may skip some of this." "Okay." She looked nervous. I asked, "Do you want the microphone stand up higher?" "Yes, please." That was the whole conversation. When the tribute slot came, Mom walked to the front. She started too quietly, adjusted the microphone, and restarted her first sentence. About a minute in, she lost her place, found it again, and said, "Sorry, I'm not Emma," which got a few sympathetic smiles. Then she kept going. She thanked the relatives she wanted thanked. She mentioned Grandma and Grandpa raising 3 kids. She talked about Grandma's church friends, old neighbors, and the people who had helped her after Grandpa died. She skipped one paragraph. I know because I had read that speech enough times to notice. Hearing Mom say it, the sentences sounded less strange to me. They fit her. When she said a lifetime of devotion to family, it sounded natural coming from her. When she thanked every branch of the family, it sounded like the woman who had spent 3 weeks worrying that somebody would feel forgotten. She finished a little faster than she probably intended and looked straight at me. I started the video. Grandma recognized her sister immediately and said, loudly enough for the first 2 tables to hear, she finally figured out her phone. People laughed. A few minutes later, the former neighbor told the snow-shoveling story, and Grandma shook her head even though she was smiling. That was one time, she said. Another clip showed a few old photographs from when Grandma was younger. Then there were several seconds from an old family recording where she was laughing so hard at something off camera that she had to put down her coffee. Grandma covered her mouth when she saw it. Near the end, her former coworker said they had worked together for 23 years. Grandma leaned toward me. 22. Of course it was, I whispered. She had tears in her eyes by then, but she was still correcting the record. After the video, Grandma squeezed my hand and asked how I had found her old coworker. I told her I had gotten the number from Aunt Carol. Then she asked if there was any cake left. A couple of people later asked whether I had made the video. I said yes. One of Grandma's old friends wanted a copy for her. Mostly everyone went back to coffee, cake, and conversations that had nothing to do with me. The video was for Grandma, and Grandma had gotten it. Near the end of cleanup, Mom found me stacking empty picture frames into a box. I still don't understand why you couldn't just read it. I was tired enough that I did not want to restart the argument. Because you wrote it. I was trying to make sure everyone was included. I know, and your version was nice. I never said it was. I know that too. She folded a tablecloth once badly, then unfolded it and tried again. Finally, she said, I guess I thought because you were the one speaking, I could just give you what needed to be said. I looked at her. That was the problem. She did not apologize. I did not ask her to. We finished cleaning up. She took the leftover centerpieces home. I took my laptop and the flash drive. Grandma left with 2 containers of cake she claimed she did not want. For a while after that, Mom and I did not talk about the speech again. Then, a few months later, she was helping plan an anniversary dinner for my aunt and uncle. She texted me, I have 3 things I want mentioned. Want me to send them to you, or should I just do the toast? I stared at that message longer than it deserved. Then I wrote back, send them. I'll write what I'm going to say. A minute later, 3 bullet points came through. I used 2 of them.